Hi, my name is Karen Sliwinski. I'm an independent Stampin' Up! Demonstrator from Northeast Ohio. I'm very excited. I got a brand new phone and I'm going to be making a video. So because it has really good filming capabilities, I decided that I would film an intro. So you get to see my face at the beginning and then we'll switch down and I'll show you how to make a beautiful watercolor card. So let's get started.
All right, we're ready to get started. I am going to be showing you how to do some very simple watercoloring, but it's going to give you stunning results. So I'm going to be working with the Quite Curvy bundle. Here you can see both. We have all these dies that go along with the stamps. There's also a Curvy Christmas bundle that you can get that's got this really beautiful paper and some Christmas artwork. So that's what we're going to be working with today. And the supplies that you're going to need. You're going to need half a sheet of crumb cake card base. You're going to need a Whisper White layer. This is 3 3/4 by 5, and then a piece of black that's just a little bit bigger at 3 7/8 by 5 1/8. Then you're going to need a piece of Granny Apple Green. This measures 1 1/2 inches by 5. And then you're going to need some watercolor paper. So you're going to need a strip that's about 1 3/4 by 5 3/4, and then just a scrap. So this is the card that I made. This was my mock-up. So I made this card using blends. So you can see that I just colored them with the Granny Apple Green, and I just used the light and dark, and then I used some soft suede and some Cajun craze on the bird. So this was my mock-up, but we're going to do it with watercolor. So I'm going to just set that one aside. So I'm going to just go ahead and get my card base folded. So we're just going to fold that in half and then just give that a crease with our bone folder. And then I'm going to set that aside. And I'm going to set aside both my layer of black and my Granny Apple for right now because we don't really need that. And then this is going to be where we're going to put our sentiment. I'm going to show you how to do that with the Stamparatus. But what I'd like to start with is the piece that I have stamped in black ink, and then I have gone over it. I don't know if you can see the shine on it, but I've gone over it. I've used the Stamparatus, and then I put clear embossing powder with my Versamark ink, and then I used my heat tool to get this beautiful embossing. So you can do any of our stamp colors. You can use your Stamparatus, stamp in your color, then stamp again in the Versamark and use the clear, and then you can have embossing in any of the colors. So I did that with both that and the bird. So I'm going to show you, we are going to be using water painters today. There are 3 that come in this set. So we've got a wide brush. This gives you a really nice watercolor wash. I'm going to put that aside. And then we've got 2 brushes that are, get the lids off, are a little bit bigger, and then a fine tip. So one thing I do want to point out is that these screw the opposite way of what you're used to. So if you're trying to get it undone and you're like, I can't do it, it's because it screws the opposite way. I also find that it's helpful if you have these fairly full of water so that when you go to color, it squeezes easier. So for my leaves, I'm going to start out, I'm going to use Granny Apple Green. I'm going to use a little bit of Garden Green. So what I like to do is give a little bit of a light wash. So this is a really good technique. You just use your block and you'll put some ink right on that block. And then we are going to add some water. Just squeeze some water and get this going. Oh, it does not want to squeeze out for me right now. Okay. And I'm just going to give a nice little, fair amount of water because I want this to be a nice, light, even color. So then I am just going to put a light wash over my leaves. So I'm basically getting the leaves wet at the same time as I'm giving them a nice, light color of this green. So this is sort of just prepping the surface. And you're going to see that embossing is a really nice thing, especially when you're new to watercoloring, because that kind of keeps the water corralled. And you definitely do not want to do this on regular paper, because regular paper isn't meant to hold the water and things are just going to pill. So you have to have a watercolor paper so that it can handle all the water that we're putting on. So you see, as I'm just going ahead, adding a nice light wash. You can have some white spaces left. It doesn't have to be totally covered. And you're going to see as we start adding our color, it's going to start flowing and move with the wet that we've already put down. So I'm almost done here. A few more of these leaves. And then we'll be ready to add a little bit of depth of color. And we may have to go back and add a little bit of water to the first ones that we did, just to give it a little bit more moisture content. Okay, now if you want to add a little depth of color, you can just start dabbing on your stronger, not so washed out bits from the block of the Granny Apple Green. And depending on how wet this is, this will kind of flow. And if you want to just, you know, kind of add around the veins, around the base of it. If you want to have some that are a little bit darker, and add a little bit more water to some of these. You just go ahead and you play. And I really recommend that you experiment with this. You're not going to be maybe perfect the very first time you do it, but the more you play with this, the more that you're going to love the effects that you can get with watercolor. So I'm going to add some darker green to some of these leaves over here. And then we're going to pull in our garden green. And we're going to add some depth of color. So with the garden green, I have an older stamp pad. And you can just kind of squeeze it really easily. And so I like to just take it right from the lid. So I'm going to make sure that some of these are wet enough. I'm going to add some more water to the base. And then I'm just going to dab in a little bit of the garden green. And it's going to move, and you can mix your colors. You can do, this has got a lot of water, so this will be a perfect one. And you'll see how it flows with the wet that's already there. So I'm going to add a little bit more water to this one, and then add some green at the base. And some of these leaves you just may want to have a little bit darker altogether, so you can cover the whole thing with your garden green. But as you look at this, you're going to see that there's not total coverage on these. There's a little bit of white space, there's some variation. We're just going to add a little bit there to the stems. And over here, I think this one needs a little bit more of the granny. And we'll do a little bit of the apple. So you just kind of dab. It's also helpful to have an old cloth. I have an old t-shirt from my husband, and I just use that to help mop up any of my spills, or if my brush gets a little bit too wet, add some green to this one here. And you get beautiful variation of color. And I think that looks really good. So the one thing you want to do is you want to squeeze until you get your water coming out clear. So you can see all that green that stays in the brush. You just keep wanting to squeeze it until it runs clear. A little bit more. I've got quite a bit of green in there. Okay, I think we're just about clear with the green. Let me go to another spot. Okay, so I'm going to close up my greens, and we are going to switch gears, and we're going to go over to our little bird. So on that one, I have chosen to use Cherry Cobbler, Cajun Craze, and Crumb Cake. So I'm going to open this up. So you can see I've got a little bit on my lid. I'm going to move my bird over here. Now, I'm not really a bird person, so I don't even know if these are real colors that you would want. But I'm just going to go ahead and I'm going to use some of this crumb cake. And I'm just going to give him a nice little light coating. And then I'm going to pick up a little bit of the darker, And just kind of let that flow here right in the base, under his wing, kind of on his belly. And I think that looks great. I'm going to close up the crumb cake, and then I'm going to move over to the Cajun craze. And again, I've got enough on my lid that I can go ahead and use this. Oops, I want the little brush. Squeeze out, make sure I get rid of all that color that's there. And I'm going to pick up a little bit of my Cajun craze. All right, so he's going to get colored over. So I'm putting a first little wash. Try to get that little bit of the tail. And you can see how the water is just staying right there because of the embossing. So this is, like I said, it's a wonderful way to start with watercoloring because you don't have to be really perfect. The embossing really does a magic trick for you. And then we're just going to add just a little bit of depth of color in just to make him a little bit more vibrant. Let's see if I can get up in the tail. And then I think he looks fabulous. All right, so that is our watercoloring. It was fast and easy. I really hope that you give it a try. And we're going to set those aside. Now, you really do want to let these dry. I do like to let them dry on their own. You could use your heat tool if you wanted to, but if you let them dry on their own, I think you get a better look. But look at this. I don't know if you can see just the life that you get with having both the embossing and the watercolor. So I'm going to set those aside. So now we are ready to assemble our card. I'm going to move this messy block out of the way because last thing I want to do is get green ink where we don't want it. So I have set up my Stamparatus. Okay. And so I have set it up. I'm just going to grab my ink here. All right. Oh, you're getting a nice little reflection from my little light. So hopefully I can minimize that a little bit. So we're going to put in our paper right here in the corner, and I am using this little verse. Now, the great thing about this, these sentiments are flexible. So I had already figured out kind of the curve that I wanted to make. I'm just going to ink that up, and then press that down. And then it says, wishing you the happiest of birthdays. So that looks wonderful. I'm going to set that out of the way. And we are going to layer that onto our card. So the first thing we need to do is layer the white piece down. So I'm just going to add my glue. It's a brand new glue, and so it's going to come out fast. And this is just the tiniest of margins. All right. And then if you want to see, you can give a little bit of wiggle room. It's one thing I really love about the glue. All right, and then this is going to go onto our card. But first we want to add our piece of green. So this is going to go right at the bottom. So again, we're just going to put our glue on here. And let me just move this over. It's going to go right along the bottom of the white. So let me just line that up. Okay. And then this is going to get popped up onto our card base. So I'm going to just go ahead and add some dimensionals. I like to give them at least 6. Even better if you give a couple more so that you've got really good support. You don't want this to go sagging on you. Pull off our backings, and then this is just going to layer right onto our crumb cake base. So it's going to center right on there. It's going to have a nice little border. Now, through the magic of video, I have already colored and let dry, and then I use the dies that come with the set to cut this out. So this piece is going to get popped up right here. So we're going to add some dimensionals. And again, you don't want this to be sagging in the middle. You want to make sure that you have enough dimensionals to support it the entire way. And then we're going to put another dimensional And this is just about the right size. You could also use a mini if you wanted to, but that regular size fits. So we're going to peel these off. And we're just going to position this a little bit lower. We don't want a gap there in the green. And it's going to go all the way across the card base. Give that a good press. And then we've got our little bird, and he is wishing you the happiest of birthdays. So we're just going to place him right about there. And there you have your card. So now tell me which one you like better. This is the card we just made. And look at that beautiful shine. And then this was the card that I made as my sample using blends. I think both are very beautiful. I kind of like the coloring. I got a little bit more shading maybe with the blends on the bird. But I do love the brightness that you get with the watercolor. So what is your favorite? The watercolor version or the blends? Please let me know in the comments. If you've liked this video, please give me a thumbs up and share it with your friends. I'd love to help you with your stamping needs. And I'm also going to show you this other little card that I made. This is also using watercolors. This one took a little bit more time, but I did the same technique where I stamped in the color. This one happens to be terracotta tile, and this one was mint macaron. And then I embossed them with the clear powder, and then I started watercoloring. So I used a whole variety of colors, and you can see I got some wonderful shading, added a little bit of pink and purple to the tips. So you can get as involved as you want with this. Just give it a try. Start out with something simple like this one here, and then try your hand at something a little bit more delicate. Thanks for watching.